This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Shahin.
Hello, this is Jadon Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellowwallpod podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 418 of the Yellowwallpod. I'm your host Stefan Butzko, and today we will talk about Borussia Dortmund parting ways with head coach Marco Rose after only one season, and whether Edin Terzic is now the right man for the job. For all that and more, joins me Matthias Zug, who is recovering from COVID, which is why we're not having a video session right now, so I don't have to see your sorry face, Matthias.
Yeah, nobody needs to see that.
How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. It's not as bad as it was when I had it the first time, but it's still meh. You know, I mean, anytime I get sick, it's like, ugh. But yeah, it just is what it is. But it's definitely a lot better today than it was just a couple of days ago. So I apologize that nobody gets to see my plague-ridden face right now.
Well, so this year should have been an episode, and actually we were supposed to record yesterday, but I wasn't quite sure how you were feeling, so I, backed off a little and tried to give you the time to recover, because the season is over and we don't have to rush anything. So this episode was supposed to be about the very emotional send-off of Michael Zorc and Marcel Schmelzer, first and foremost, and, various other players. However, I don't know how you woke up to the news, because we both live in the United States, so I most definitely woke up to the news, and I was just glancing at my phone, and I thought maybe there's a news about Charlie Özcan signing with Dortmund, and I had to do a double take, and then I was very quickly upright in bed, reading the push notifications that indeed Borussia Dortmund have parted ways with Marco Rose, and the press release reads as following: "This decision is the outcome of an intensive season analysis conducted by Rose, Chief Executive Officer Hans-Joachim, Sporting Director Michael Zorc, Head of Licensed Player Department Sebastian Kehl, and external consultant Matthias Sammer on Thursday." And then, quote, "The day was not an easy one for all of us, as we all have held each other in high regard and continue to do so. After a season that was unsatisfactory for various reasons, we were forced to conclude that we did not achieve the maximum possible in many areas," said Hans-Joachim Watzke. And that surely is a sentence that we will give a lot of attention to, but I think in equal parts we will give attention to what Marco Rose said next in this press release. And he said, "Despite a difficult season with many uncertainties, I was convinced by our path. During our discussion, I developed the impression there was no longer a 100% conviction among all those responsible. We therefore ultimately decided together to end the cooperation." So yeah, that's obviously a very interesting press release. Then obviously said they thank each other and are grateful for the partnership, and then the final sentence is Borussia Dortmund will hold talks about the composition of the future coaching staff in coming days. So Matthias, that was not entirely out of nowhere, because we all knew that they would have the sort of season analysis, but nevertheless, what was your first reaction?
Well, much like you, I got up nice and early, got myself my coffee, let the dogs out, sat down on the recliner and opened the Kika app, which is the first thing I do every morning. I don't read social media or the news. I read sports news, because that's the least aggravating thing in the world, usually.
I don't know about that.
And, well, I mean, this week it was overall pretty good. And I saw that and I went, I'm sorry, what? And then I went to Twitter, and then I went to and then it was like, all right, every news source I could find, and obviously everyone just quoted the exact same thing. Everybody had their opinions and analysis about it, and it was shocking and unexpected. Though, when I sat back after breakfast and copious amounts of coffee, I said to myself, I'm like, okay, it's shocking. I have some questions about it. I have some criticisms even about it. But I can also at the same time see where this decision is coming from. So it went from shock to, okay, well, this will be interesting. Good luck, Sebastian Kiel. And that was kind of how it sank in. And then, of course, I had a quick analysis on Twitter, and which is always the smart thing to do at 6 a.m, and a few exchanges. So it's sunk in now after a few hours, and I have a few thoughts regarding it.
Yeah, I don't really know where to begin. So obviously, let's start with the Watzke statement. I think we can all agree that Rose and his coaching staff did not maximize the potential of this team. Even though we can also all agree that it was not a team that was, easily coached. You had a non-existent season preparation, to be honest. You had a million injuries, and you also did not have the squad players that would fit your style of football if you're Marco Rose. So I think everyone quite knows this, but even that all being said, I still think, especially in the cup competitions, it was very painful for Borussia Dortmund. And I don't know if the cup win by Eintracht Frankfurt, and by the way, huge congrats. I left out a big yell when Boré scored that final penalty. Whether that put Watzke and co over the edge, I'm not entirely sure. But let's start with that, Matthias, because I think this is where we probably should start before we talk about external communication, etc., and whether now Edin Terzic, who is rumored to take over, really is the right guy. Season assessment, Matthias. Obviously, Ruhrnachrichten reported that the talk they had only lasted 2 hours, which I personally find a bit laughable, because we all know how quickly time moves, and we're doing podcasts, and the amount of content you can churn through in 2 hours is very limited for an entire season and what needs to be analyzed. Obviously, we know it's not the only get-together they have, but nevertheless, if it's your big end of day season analysis, then 2 hours to me seem a little bit short. But Matthias, now it is up on you to tell me where Marco Rose ultimately, in your mind, fell short, so that in the minds of Dortmund's bosses, a continuation was not, at 100%.
Well, Edin Terzic had too much success in a too short period of time.
Do you think it's that easy?
No, obviously not. But I'll be honest, had Lucien Favre not been sacked, and last season kind of petered out, seeing where the trend was going at the time, Dortmund would have finished maybe Europa League, maybe completely out of Europe, and then, Favre was gone. And then based on that, then this season from Rose looks actually like a complete success. It's like, okay, we've righted the ship a little bit, we're heading in the right direction, and we'll just keep going with this. However, Dortmund made it into the Champions League, won the DFB Pokal with an inexperienced young coach who somehow clicked with a team. Now, granted, there was still Jadon Sancho as part of the team, and we cannot forget him. He's a massive difference maker. It was in a weird time, of course, Geisterspiele, all that kind of stuff, but Dortmund weren't facing a huge injury crisis, all that kind of stuff. And I know there are, and I've always been an apologist for Marco Rose because I think he's a very good coach in terms of, okay, you didn't really have a true summer period to get his ideas across because we had the Euros, then you had a lot of injuries, then you had all the COVID outbreaks, then you had more injuries, and he just every week it seemed like had to throw together a team. I don't know if more than maybe a handful of times this season he was actually able to field his starting 11 that he wanted from goalkeeper to striker. And so it was very, very difficult. That being said, I think part of the problem was just inconsistency too much. Yes, it was a record-breaking season. That's the funny thing. Dortmund have never scored more goals. They've conceded more, but it's still a bad season defensively. And not all of that is on Terzic, on Rose, but some of it is because you can't just blame it on needing to figure out your back line too many times because there were plenty of times where at least the central defenders and the goalkeeper were healthy. It was the same three players. Fullbacks were a little bit transitory, but so be it. The problem is the play broke down much earlier than that. The pressing was inconsistent. The team pressing was inconsistent, which would leave gaps open.
Yeah, incoherent.
Yes, and you also started to see, shoulder sagging again. Now, I'm not picking on Guerrero because he always has a bad attitude, but other players as well. And, you look at, I forget which game it was that you mentioned a few times where there was just a lot of bickering amongst the team.
The 3-0 win against Fürth.
Yes, that's right, against Fürth. And those are kind of things that if you juxtapose that to the final, glorious 3-month run under Terzic to end the season, that didn't happen. That wasn't there. The team was also pressing much better, coherently. The automatisms were there. Yes, again, they had Sancho. They were healthier at that time. But at the same time, it's not like everything was hunky-dory and perfect either at that time. The fullback positions were always in flux, it seems like, for 3 years at this point. And so I think where Rose kind of fell flat was too many times the flow during the game didn't work. Where you would just leave yourself open time and time again to the opponent. We saw that also under Favre in his last season, or maybe the last 12 months of his tenure at Dortmund. And some people say it's down to the players. And I do put a lot of blame on the players. However, if you didn't have that Terzic window in between, it'd be easier to say that because in that window, specifically those 2-3 months near the end, that was not an issue. So how did it become an issue again? And I think that's where the powers that be, the brass, kind of looked at it and went, okay, these players can do it differently. So what's the problem? And they must have just come to to the idea that, well, it's the coach, because we can't forget Marco Rose did choke away a few things with Gladbach in his time there. So we can't completely disregard that. So, and the fact that Borussia Dortmund looked at it and said, well, we kind of already have the replacement here. And the whole thing, some people, I forget who it was, said on Twitter, Dortmund wasted a year because now they let Rose go and they had Terzic, it's a wasted year. No, that's simplistic, because when they basically announced the hiring of Marco Rose, you didn't, at that time, Terzic had played a couple of games and they were really bad as coach, so it was 100% the right decision. And when Terzic then ended the season winning, getting the Champions League and winning the Cup, you couldn't then turn around to Marco Rose, who basically was already out of Gladbach, and say, oh, guess what? We're not taking you now. That opens huge legal issues. at that point, also with Borussia Mönchengladbach and so on. So it kind of all had to play out the way it did. The good thing is Dortmund still finished second, and I think what also did him in were just the horrendous cup performances. Just bad, just atrociously bad. There is no reason, based on the strength of this squad, that Dortmund, A, shouldn't have at least come in second in their Champions League group, or B, have advanced significantly further in the Europa League. And not even to mention losing to St. Pauli in the DFB Pokal. You throw all those things together, that's embarrassing. And going out in cup competitions isn't embarrassing. Going out like that is embarrassing.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked plenty about most of these performances, if not all of them, to be honest. And, you know, I'm sometimes torn between, is the squad really that bad, or was the coaching that horrendous? Because in some instances, that the way Dortmund fell apart, you know, just take the 4-2 home loss against Rangers, where they were in control without really scoring too many, or without creating too many opportunities, but they were in control. And then I think Zagadou has this one weird mistake where the ball pops against his hand or so, and it's a penalty, right? And then Dortmund just collapse. And these are things that annoy me to no end, and I'm not sure how much about this is the coach and how much about this is just how the players are. Now, what does irk me about the whole scenario today is that, you know, what I really like is consistency on the coaching position. And, you know, whether you talk about the wasted year or not, I think it's a big loss for Borussia Dortmund today, because they said Marco Rose is our guy. And, you know, after one season, which in my mind is not a lot, you are now parting ways. Now, obviously, before we talk more about, you know, what Dortmund said and didn't say, I found it also very interesting, the second quote from this press release is that Marco Rose did not feel the 100% backing. Now, Matthias, when I talk about Marco Rose's season, how I would assess it, I think in many ways Dortmund did overperform results-wise throughout their Bundesliga season. I think there were a lot of games that they shouldn't have won, be it in Hoffenheim or against Cologne, etc., or even Union Berlin. I think there were a couple of games where then sort of Haaland saved them and whatnot. Where I thought, well, you know, considering how the performances were, the fact that they still won the games was kind of intriguing. But I think the overall criticism toward Marco Rose throughout this one season is that at no point anybody could really see a handwriting by this coach. You know, it was always a bit murky, and I think in the end, it really comes down to team cohesion, because it never really felt like the positional play, the spacing between players, and the way Dortmund attack and defend in the schemes is really tuned in. And at no point, even when Dortmund were out of all the cup competitions, there was more time on the training ground, I ever got the feeling I really understood what the idea really was. Now, based on that, I'll be honest, I'm not 100% backing Marco Rose either. You know, just based on my own assessment, you know, I don't 100% have the feeling that he's the guy for Borussia Dortmund. But obviously, I personally, and I'm going to say it this way, I expected Dortmund to you know, take on the next season with him. And I always assumed that, you know, you should give a manager way more time than just one season, especially given how involved he was in the latest transfers. And, you know, it's a massive cut, and so at least you have a coach to develop and help with that. And I thought this would be the right approach for Dortmund to hold on to him. Now, obviously, Dortmund are standing there without Marco Rose, and my question to you is, and how much you're reading into this, and I think in coming ways we will learn more about what actually unfolded on this infamous Thursday now, during that talk between officials and the coach. But my feeling is that Marco Rose himself sort of drew a line and basically asked for a ride or die commitment from the Dortmund officials and didn't quite get that. So I feel like he himself sort of said, well, you know what, then I'm out. What are you making of it? I can read the quote again if you want.
No, I mean, yeah, he kind of, the statement that he said, I didn't feel like I had the full backing.
Yeah.
And given the supposed or reported brevity of the meeting in 2 hours, that maybe and I've been in meetings like this in my life, professional life, where you sit down, you evaluate performance and how things are going. And, upper management is kind of like, we need to improve some things. And well, what if the person then goes, so are you telling me you don't have confidence in what I'm doing? Do you think I can't do it? Are there any doubts? Whether you ask it that bluntly or beating around the bush, and you get the feeling of, then I wouldn't be surprised if Marco Rose just went, you know what? Then forget it. Then let's just end this and part, and we can go our separate ways. And obviously Marco Rose isn't stupid, because he sees how many coaching vacancies there are in general in Europe right now, and more to come, so that, he'll find a job relatively quickly.
Yeah. I think the guy who should be most scared right now is Domenico Tedesco.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, Marco Rose, as much as I hate RB Leipzig, he's from Leipzig. That's his hometown. That's where his family lives.
Yeah, he never set roots in Dortmund, which always raised an eyebrow for me.
Or anywhere. Yeah. Gladbach as well. I mean, it was always Leipzig is home.
Shared living situation with Alexander Zickler. Exactly,
and which is just the funniest thing in the world, knowing Alexander Zickler as a player in the 90s. So that would actually make perfect sense. I mean, if RB Leipzig has made the Champions League, they disappointed in the Europa League. Ideally, they disappointed in the DFB Cup final, and then maybe they look at it and go, well, we've got this guy from the Red Bull school of thought who plays the kind of football we want and is actually from Leipzig, which from a marketing standpoint, that club or that team, that franchise needs. It needs somebody to anchor it in the community as if it's like always been there, kind of a icky thing.
Happy 13th birthday to the miscarriageless RB Leipzig.
Exactly. So I mean, it was calculated. It wasn't uncalculated. I guarantee you, Marco Rose talked with family and agent. I don't know who his agent is. And went, if this goes south, if I'm not totally happy, and for him to basically make the statement he did, I don't think he was entirely happy at the end, because this is a big gig.
100% true. Because you could see how unnerved he was toward the end with all the questions and all that nonsense. Because there was a lot of criticism aimed towards him. I think Didi Hamann got the most under his skin. But I think that is correct, that he wasn't 100% happy. But
Yeah, it probably kind of went down like that, and everybody went, okay, fine, we'll just move on. I mean, the good thing is you have two very qualified Borussia Dortmund coaches in the top brass of Borussia Dortmund right now. So worst case scenario, you've got Zama and Terzic to look at. Both of whom have had incredible success as coaches at
honestly,
Dortmund.
I don't see Matthias Sammer.
I mean, that's tongue in cheek, but I'm just saying it's got to be hard for someone like Marco Rose to sit there across from two coaches who have had success, and he didn't. And it's still successful in the sense that they finished second. I mean, that's one thing people act as if Dortmund got relegated or they finished mid-table. And it's
posted.
Yeah, I mean, defensively, it was not good, obviously. Offensively, it was very good. But the crazy thing is it could have been better. But it was a record-setting year. They finished in second in the Bundesliga. And even under Klopp and Tuchel, their distance between first and second to Bayern at times was significantly greater than it was now with Marco Rose. And you could argue that Dortmund didn't deserve to lose the 2 matches to Bayern. So, I mean, it's a weird season. I think that everybody can kind of agree with that across the board. No matter which country, no matter which club, it's just been a weird season. Even Bayern, they're not happy. And they won the title again because, oh, well, you're going to. So, yeah, I mean, it's a shame. It is a loss. It's not a lost season. It's a shame that it had to come to this because, like I said, Marco Rose, I believe, is a very good coach. And it just didn't work out. And sometimes it just doesn't work out. But I'd rather it not work out and Dortmund finish second than it not work out and Dortmund have finished 13th. Because we've been there, Stefan.
Yeah.
Somebody brought up, who was it? Kevin Hatcher on Twitter yesterday or this morning brought up, Pochettino. And then Terry DeFellon said, well, the last non-German speaking coach that Dortmund had was Nevio Scala, at which I almost had an epileptic seizure when I saw that, because that reminded me of 1997.
Yeah, I was sure
post-Hitzfeld.
that it's hard to compare those, but yeah.
Yeah, but be that as it may, I mean, Pochettino, yeah, that would be amazing, but that's not going to happen. I think if I was putting money down, it would be Edin Terzic. That's...
Yeah.
To not take him would be really weird at this point.
No, absolutely. I think pretty much Ruhrnachrichten, and I mean, everyone was, first of all, caught by surprise. It wasn't like, everyone and their dog already knew what was going to happen today. But I also think that so far Terzic is the favorite. Now, that being said, it's only Friday and things can change quickly, and maybe Dortmund come up with a different solution. Because my question to you is now, if you're Edin Terzic, will you take this job? Because it's not like Borussia Dortmund the entire time communicated that Edin Terzic is 100% your guy. Let's talk about that communication breakdown a little bit, because Sebastian Kehl, I think after the most recent Fürth game, said, quote, that he's expecting Rose to be the coach next season, leaving a little bit of leeway where he then had to go on Doppelpass the next day or so and rectify the statement saying, yes, we will try to improve upon this season. But I think, to me, it's yet again a problem about how Borussia Dortmund communicate externally. And so my question to you is, how much PR damage is this again for Dortmund? Because, they certainly have to moderate it a little bit better than they're doing right now.
I mean, I'll be honest, I don't think there's going to be any PR damage out of this. Not to a significant degree that it makes any difference. It's the world of football. Worse shit has happened. I mean, if you look at the fallout with Hütter, Bobic, Eintracht Frankfurt last season, that was significantly more uncomfortable than what this is. I'll be honest, I don't think Kehl and co. went into this meeting with Marco Rose, the typical after-season analysis meeting that they do every year. I don't think they went into it with the intention of parting ways. I honestly do not think they did.
No, they didn't.
I believe that the tone of the meeting turned at some point, and I don't think we'll ever know who was the instigator of it turning. And after 2 hours, it was just, okay, well, there's no point. Let's just end this. And which is a real shame, because obviously then somehow it either got heated or somebody was just blocking the whole time, or I don't know. I don't know how thin-skinned Marco Rose is. Maybe he's very thin-skinned. Maybe he's got a massive ego. And so any type of criticism internally, and he's just like, I'm out. We've seen plenty of coaches like that. And so...
Yeah, let's flip that around, though. How thin-skinned is Watzke, maybe? Maybe Rose
I don't
had
think
some
so.
postseason thoughts on the squad and how it was put together, and maybe he criticized
I don't think so at all.
The higher-ups.
I don't think so at all. I know it's in vogue right now to dump on Zorc and Watzke, which I don't agree with at all. given what Watzke has been through with this club, I think he's pretty thick-skinned in that regard. But who knows what tone was taken? But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It's completely irrelevant. The only thing that matters is what the outcome was. And so in terms of, I've seen some takes where it's like, oh, don't want to have egg on their face because they said they're going to go into the new season with Marco Rose, and now they fired him. Well, I think until 2 hours before that meeting, they were going into next season with Marco Rose. And something happened in that meeting to make everybody go, fine, there's no point. Let's move on. And so they had to make an about turn. It happens. We also can't forget that, I'm not going to say Marco Rose left Gladbach high and dry. That's not the case. But he did leave them essentially mid-season, saying, I'm out. And I don't think Eberl and Gladbach were 100% sure if that was going to happen. So there's probably plenty of blame to go around, and it didn't seem to fit for whatever reason. So be it. As far as Edin Terzic, whether he would take the job, yeah. I mean, why wouldn't he? He's unless he's a petulant child. If he's an adult, which I take him to be a very mature person, then he'll realize that the situation he was in at the end of the season, given that Marco Rose had already been hired, there was no way the club could backtrack from that. There was just no way legally it would have turned into a complete fiasco. There was just no way to go around that. So I think he'll be perfectly fine. I think also the solution that they moved him off the coaching staff and basically into the front office was 100% the right thing to do, because that would have been a massively awkward situation all season long. So I think in that regard, if it's Edin Terzic, I believe it will be Edin Terzic, then I don't think he would have any doubt to take over and give it a go.
Well, first of all, I think we have to commend Dortmund and Terzic first and foremost for not being the proverbial Damocles sword throughout the entire period, because I thought that Terzic, you saw him on the stands a couple of times, but overall I thought he was very reserved. And I don't remember him giving too many interviews, just, immediately after his success. But then, it was very quiet around his persona. And I don't think he added any pressure on Rose whatsoever. At least in my mind. Obviously, maybe internally it was different. But at least externally, Edin Terzic was not really much of a discussion, which I think is a very positive thing, because this could have been... talk about communications disaster. This could have been handled also very poorly. So I'm glad about that. So now let's talk about Edin Terzic, because obviously, first of all, if it's Terzic, I'm just happy for the guy that he gets to coach Dortmund in front of sold out stadium and will have that experience. Just from the personal matter, I think he got robbed a little bit in the sense that there was not a big celebration after the cup win, just because of the pandemic. So in that regard, I'm happy. But on the other hand, I also have a lot of doubts about Edin Terzic, and so has everyone, because yes, he did have success, he did have results, and most importantly, he did form a connection between club and fans as a coach, because he's a guy from the area, and I think that's a massive advantage to have. But my question obviously is, what is the long-term development of Borussia Dortmund? Speaking of tactical cohesion, obviously, what is the Edin Terzic school of football, and how will that propel us to be a very competitive second best or best team in Germany again? Because ultimately, I think this is where everyone wants to be in Dortmund. So is he the guy, Matthias, to now have this massive task? And maybe before I ask this question, because I think it's very important, is the amount of pressure that would have been on Rose going into this season, because of all the transfers and obviously the big rebuild. I think that the amount of pressure on Rose would have been massive, and had it not gone well within the first 3-4 months or so. I could have also seen his second coming, to be honest. I was already thinking about that before it actually now happened. So obviously that doesn't mean it's going to be much easier for Edin Terzic either, because the pressure will be on considering the transfers. So yeah, what are you making out of this, and maybe the fact that Dortmund very openly communicated how involved Marco Rose was in recruiting the likes of Schlotterbeck and Niklas Süle and selling his and the club's vision to these high-profile signings that Dortmund so far have made?
That's a lot to unpack right there.
It is, but we've got time.
As far as Edin Terzic and his brand of football, my hope is, and I don't know this or not, that he also during this year expanded his knowledge and, let's say, his philosophical take, because he wasn't just thrown in. I mean, you can't forget he took it over and it was like, here you go, kid. Good luck to you. Have some fun and don't suck. Whereas now he had a year with absolutely no pressure to, it's not a sabbatical in that sense, but to really develop as a coach and as a professional within the footballing industry. So that's the first thing. So I think we'll see it. I think as far as Marco Rose selling, the Marco Rose way and the Borussia Dortmund way and tactically where they're going to these players, if it's Edin Terzic, then I think they'll be fine. More counterattacking, aggressive, pressing, all that, which Terzic already showed is what he likes, which Marco Rose, in the good moments of Borussia Dortmund this season, they definitely showed. I mean, they suffocated teams at times, but they just couldn't keep it up. So in that case, I don't think there's going to be much of a paradigm shift, not as extreme as it was going from Favre. That was a huge shift to what Terzic wanted, and we saw that for 3 months. It was uncomfortable at times to watch because it seemed like nobody knew how to press anymore. So that in that regard, I'm not worried about it. And Dortmund saying publicly how Rose was involved in especially these 3 transfers, where you think about Adeyemi, Schlotterbeck, and Süle. Again, I go back to my point of they were expecting to start the season with him. They weren't expecting to have him, to fire him or to part ways with him. And so that's why they naturally did that. Now, the one point you bring up that is extremely valid is the pressure for Rose would be immense, because yes, Holland is gone, but the amount of money that Dortmund is investing in very good, young, prime, and even pre-prime players, if, like you said, it wouldn't click after 3-4 months, or by November, because apparently November's firing season in Dortmund. Just ask Bosch and Favre. It's like November, December. That's a bad time of year.
Yeah, Bosch was let go on my birthday, so that was December.
Yeah, and Favre was at the end of November, I believe. It was right around roughly the same time. But then that maybe Marco Rose went, you know what? If I get let go then, and it's mid-season, I'm not going to find another gig that's worth a dang until the summer, probably, because I don't think he's a Feuerwehrmann. That doesn't seem his MO. So leaving now with a much larger field of potential jobs out there makes more sense from a calculated standpoint.
Yes. Marco Rose will be the biggest Freiburg fan tomorrow.
Yes. So I think in that regard, that definitely played into it. That's why I could see Marco Rose going in there into that meeting, and if the tone didn't quite reflect what somehow he had in his head, that he would go, yeah, I don't want to anymore. We're done here. And I wouldn't be shocked by that, because everything, for me, circumstantial evidence, is pointing that is the direction it went. Because all the communication from Dortmund was, we're moving forward with him. If they didn't have that confidence, he wouldn't have been instrumental in those transfers. He wouldn't have been part of the discussion to the degree that they're saying he was at the time that they happened. Obviously, a coach is always part of the discussion, but Marco Rose was very involved. And they made a point of letting everybody know at that time that Marco Rose was very involved. Or it's not like they put a press release that, hey, Marco Rose is very involved, but it organically happened. So, I don't think there's egg on their face. I think they came out of that meeting, and I just mean Borussia Dortmund, with surprise as well. I don't think this was in any way planned, and it just kind of happened that way because the way the media operates, like when Favre was let go, or Bosch was let go, or Tuchel was let go, there were already rumblings around. There were rumblings there. There was nothing. There's no indication this was going to happen. And so if it's Edin Terzic, I think it also still works with those three specific players, especially Schlotterbeck and Adeyemi, because they're young. And Terzic, we could see it.
Let's be honest, if we look at the players Dortmund recruited, I almost would say that like 80% of the coaches that Dortmund would hire would be able to work with these players and should be. Well,
they're very, very good.
Yeah.
Yes.
Unless you go like a really high possession style, and then then Süle and Schlotterbeck would still work. It's just Adeyemi is more of a counter-attacking player.
Correct, and I think that fits the way Terzic also likes to play, and I think that is kind of the decision that Dortmund made 18 months ago, where they, when they let go of Favre, that they want to go back to that, like the club DNA. This is what Dortmund is, specifically since the Klopp era. That is what Dortmund became, evolved to over the last 14, 15 years. And so that's where that would kind of fit. I don't think they would ever go to, a patient, passing, probing, 80% possession, and 3 shots on target team. I think they want to continue that more push into being more aggressive. Not always entirely counterattacking, because a lot of teams won't let them do that. And that'll be the curious thing to watch, how that plays out. And I agree with you what you said earlier, question marks behind Terzic, because this would be a different situation. He would be given a full summer prep. There's no tournament. Now, granted, it's still going to be a wonky year because of that atrocious thing that's happening in the winter.
Yeah, plus the Nations League that's about to occur now. So
I always forget about that because I could not care less.
I know, but players, it's still Marco Reus, Süle,
Schlotterbeck, Adeyemi.
Yeah,
they're all gone. And I don't even know about the Swiss contingent or anything else. But it's another weird year. Still players drop out with COVID, but that's I'm not going to say less of an issue, but that's not the main issue that they're going to have to deal with this next season. This next season, it's a wonky calendar is the problem. So, we'll have to wait and see. I don't have a lot of confidence in this calendar working out for anybody, not just Borussia Dortmund, but I hope to be completely wrong.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I'll be honest, I'm just flabbergasted by all of this, because I'm really shocked. And, sometimes I really do wonder if Dortmund, even if they don't have 100%, don't have 100% the conviction that Rose is the right guy, maybe they should have played the role of doing so, because I'll be honest, Matthias, I really wanted to see what he can do with a newish team and the rebuild. And now we do not get to see this. And obviously, I think from the press release, at least, we gauged that it was maybe even more Rose than Dortmund who came to the conclusion. But at this point, we all know very little. And it's just such a weird situation, because it just feels very unnecessary in my opinion. And a lot will be made out of this. Obviously, time will tell. Maybe, it's obviously also a chance, because if Dortmund have success with Terzic, then he can be the guy for Dortmund for a very extended period. And obviously, this is now what I'm hoping for. But first of all, I don't quite see it. I didn't quite see it with Rose either, if I'm 100% honest. But it's just annoying because now we have even more uncertainty than we had before, and it's a massive overhaul as is. And so obviously I'm really going to pay a lot of attention of what Watzke, what Kill, and I don't know if Zorc will say much. I don't think he he really contributed that much to this talk. Maybe even what Sammer is saying, because I think the communication now from Dortmund and how they will moderate, this transition will be very, very interesting. And because to me, I don't want to say it's a fumble. I don't know if egg on the face is the right thing to say, but I think people that don't pay really close attention will be irked by this. And I think a lot of people that do pay a lot of close attention are also irked by this, just because of, Dortmund officials really do saying that Rose will be the guy for the next season, and Rose himself saying that he will be the guy for the next season and looking forward to it. And, Rose saying, how much he was involved in the transfers, how he was talking to the players, etc., etc. So, interesting times. Also, Matthias, I don't know if you've seen this, but Dortmund, at least according since yesterday, were supposed to sign 2 players. Now they haven't been officially announced yet. Maybe just because those breaks were very much pumped today. But Charlie Özcan from 1. FC Köln, supposedly on the verge of joining Dortmund, already did have his medical, and his agent Dirk Hebel was spotted in Dortmund yesterday. And the reports are that Dortmund are triggering a release clause and getting the guy for about 5.5 million euros or so. Now, since you had about a day to take a look at the player and this potential transfer, what are you making of that? Not to change the subject, but I feel like we're pretty much done with the coaching.
Yeah, I think we're beating the Rose horse to death at this point. Salih Özcan, I like him. I think he's a decent player for that price tag. Absolutely, it gives Dortmund more cover in central midfield. For a player who can work hard, who can play the right pass, positionally pretty decent, and also can affect the game in forward positions at times, and knows the Bundesliga, of course, comes from an aggressive system in Köln, the way it's being played this season. So, yeah, again, for 5.5 million, I would absolutely take him. I don't honestly off the top of my head know how old he is, but he's not very old. I know he's
that. 24.
24. So, I mean, another prime age player. And I think that's a good call. It adds more depth, which Dortmund has been lacking. And it's not just depth for the sake of depth. It's somebody who can play in the Bundesliga when you need somebody else to take a breather after a Champions League game, or in the DFB Pokal, and you don't have massive performance drop-offs. So, no, I think it's a good deal, especially at that price.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited about this transfer, and here's why. Just because of the vibes, first of all. Because it feels like a vintage Dortmund transfer that really works out better than everyone expects. Not just because of the low fee, but just because he is, first of all, he's from the player profile, he's a player that Dortmund did not have last season. And desperately needed, in my view, because he can be the number 6. Now, he's not an out-and-out number 6. Maybe in that case, Dortmund should have opted for Schiri. But nevertheless, he is a very aggressive player. He's for all intents and purposes, he's like a football terrier in my view, who stuffs gaps, which is very important. Who has a good header game, so very, very important when it comes to aerial duels in midfield. And he's just very resolute in his tackling, and the way Cologne plays, he has a million interceptions. yeah, I'm very excited about him because he is a very dynamic player. Maybe if you will, he's the Thomas Delaney replacement. So yeah, obviously I don't know if he's starting material, if it's going to be, say, an Özcan Bellingham double pivot going forward, but nevertheless, I think for that money, it's an absolute no-brainer. I mean, I think his contract with Cologne was valid for 1 more year, and Cologne fans are really pissed that he is leaving because he's a Kölsche Jung. He is born and bred in Cologne, and he is, I think apart from a quick stint at Hansa Rostock, been a Cologne player for pretty much all of his life. And from the football romantic perspective, if the transfer happens, obviously not ideal for Cologne, let's put it this way, because he is also someone, that adds identity to the team, and Cologne obviously very much on the upswing, and leaving and losing someone like him, certainly also painful for them in the sporting sense. But for Dortmund, a really great gain because they need to fill the number 6 position. I don't know if that concludes all the business for potential central midfielders, but I think Lars isn't here, but for me he probably would have been in my top 3, maybe even top 2 candidates for that position to begin with. I also would have maybe had a cheeky bit on Lucas Toussaint, who's right now playing at Hertha and struggling there, but I still think, as a ball hunter and ball winner, he has very, good qualities, but just, sometimes the rest of the team isn't good enough, but maybe I'm overrating him. I'm not entirely sure. But that's obviously good news. And then the other news, I think that's probably a bit more certain, is that Alexander Meyer, the 31-year-old goalkeeper from Jan Regensburg, will now be Dortmund's number 2, joining Dortmund on a free transfer. I would not be surprised if that was going to be announced tomorrow. So, or who knows when, since I think Dortmund in general are a bit in crisis mode right now, and maybe their resources are shifting to maybe do find a different coach other than Edin Terzic, because obviously that's far from official now. It's just rumors and reports, but it all can change. So Matthias, I don't know how much Jan Regensburg you've seen, so
not enough to have an opinion at all about the backup goalkeeper.
I think the good opinion really is it's a guy with a formidable amount of experience, obviously not European or top class experience, but it's someone who does not threaten Kobel, and I think right now that's also important for his development. I don't think we need
I agree.
to raise the pressure on him. I think goalkeeper needs trust and certainty, and not having someone in his neck all the time. So that's my assessment for now. Obviously, if Kobel misses games, and then we see the performances of the second tier goalkeeper and he's not good enough, then we have another discussion. But for now, from all that I can assess, seems to be a decent transfer, especially that he's joining on the free, and I'm pretty sure his wages aren't all that high either compared to what Roman Bürki and Marvin Hitz were earning. I think this is one more on the budget option, and considering all the deals Dortmund are doing, that's very much on point, especially all the money that Dortmund have to send Marco Rose's way. So yeah, all very interesting. But other than that, I don't really have much else to say. Matthias, are there any thoughts you still have that you feel like you need to share, or shall we end it here?
Well, the only thing I want to share as far as Salih Özcan goes is that should Dortmund decide after next season to part ways with Emre Can, Özcan fills the same midfield type role at a considerably lower wage. So just putting that out there.
Yeah, I mean, if you know my opinion, for all I care, Emre Can can leave this summer. Maybe he can go back to Frankfurt. Isn't he from Frankfurt? Maybe with the Champions League money, they can sign him.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Well, I don't think that's going to happen.
No,
but
obviously not. But that was just more tongue-in-cheek. But when it comes to rebuilding, I would very much prefer to rebuild without Emre Can. But that's just my personal opinion. Maybe now that I've said it, he will take off under Edin Terzic, and we will just look back at all my bad takes as per usual. But obviously exciting transfer, and I think so far, considering the transfers Dortmund have already made, there is a lot of grounds for positivity, and that things seemingly are going in the right direction now. Obviously, as someone said to me on Twitter today, that positivity will last exactly until the second match day away from home defeat. But on that note, Matthias, I think it's time to end the show. Please tell our listeners where to follow you on Twitter.
You can follow me on Twitter at Matthiasuk.
And you can follow me at Stefan Butzko. You can follow all of us on Yellowwallpod, either on Twitter or Facebook. If you want to go to our website, go to theyellowwall.net. And I think there you can also find the link tree to every single podcast format. We also upload this podcast on YouTube and pretty much every other podcatcher. And once again, a special thanks to all of our patrons for keeping this show running. Thank you so much for your support. It is very much appreciated. And that's all from us for this week, Matthias. I hope you will feel better next week, because we will have to talk about the big goodbye to Schmelzer and Sorg, and a very emotional last match day, and maybe even more transfers, who knows, but it will not get boring. So with that in mind, as always, thank you all for listening, and goodbye.